Hello, it's week 9 of season 7 of the Andy Griffith Show. This week's episode title is The School Play. The high school kids are discussing with their teacher Helen and the school principal what kind of play to put on this year. Mrs. Fogel, the home economics teacher, is there too. She and her students provide the costumes for the play. And Howard is there, 'cause as county clerk, he handles the budget for the play. Mrs. Fogel wants to do a series of skits depicting great moments in American history, but the kids want to do a musical, and the principal says good idea. And later Andy is telling Howard and Floyd in the barbershop that Helen wants to keep it a secret what kind of musical the kids have chosen to put on. And Floyd describes a musical he said he was in high school, and he starts to sing his lines, but he's not singing very well, so Andy leaves. And then Andy sees Helen getting mad with Howard because he's telling her that there's only $38 in the budget for the play. And Andy says, well, you can make it a do-it-yourself project. And Helen says, good idea, you can help. And she puts Andy to painting the scenery. And then Helen shows him and Goober some of the costumes and one of the dances. It's a minuet. And Andy's not real impressed with it as something for high school kids. But later, Andy and Goober and Howard and the principal get to see a longer rehearsal being led by Helen. It turns out that minuet was just an initial example of the kind of dancing that kids are not into these days. And then they break into what they say they do like, rock and roll dancing. And the principal gets mad and says, stop. He says, if that's what you all have prepared for the play, then we're not going to have a play this year. And Helen disagrees. And then the principal starts in on Helen. He says if she supports that kind of decadence, then maybe she shouldn't be teaching in this town. And later, Andy is trying to make Helen feel better. And then Howard and some of the kids come over, and they want to know whether there's anything they can do to get their play back. And Howard and Helen and Andy say they'll meet with Mr. Hampton, the principal. And in the meeting, Helen claims that teenagers all over the country are doing dances like this. And Mr. Hampton says those gyrations aren't civilized. And then he calls their dancing indecent. Andy says not true. Mr. Hampton says his mind is made up, and he walks out. But Helen says she has an idea. Yeah, she invites Mr. Hampton a couple days later to a rehearsal of the revised version of the play, and he agrees to come. It starts with a spoken introduction about how kids are today, lacking social graces. And then they say they'll show how things were in the adult generation's youth. And they do a full 3-minute excellent rendition of Dancing the Charleston. And when it's over, Mr. Hampton says he guesses he's supposed to get a message that today's dancing is no different than it was in his day. And Helen says yes, each generation needs to express themselves in their language. She says she can assure him that even with the kind of dancing they like, these kids are every bit as moral and sane and stable as we adults consider ourselves to be. So the principal agrees, and he changes his mind. And in celebration, the kids all break into their Charleston again, because they got their play back. So after the play, the version that the kids wanted to put on in the first place, Andy and Howard congratulate Helen on how successful it was. And Mr. Hampton is happy about it too. He says everyone's saying it was a triumph. And then he and Helen danced together. We'll see you next week for episode 10.